The G20 Summit is about to begin in a few days, and India has a very strong position. And the US supplies depleted uranium ammunition to Ukraine. What does that mean for the geopolitical world and the war? And China bans iPhone to some of its population. And McCarthy has demands that may delay the help to Ukraine. He wants some things in exchange to the approval of the financial help to Ukraine. And Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia do not want Ukraine grains, which means the ban may be extended. And the Eurozone may just on the verge of recession. And Binance may freeze BNB private accounts, at least that's the claim. Let's find out more on this video. As the main headline said, China bring troubles to the iPhone or to the Apple shares, because the thing is, there are reports that China plans to expand a ban on use of iPhones in some government agencies. And of course, if China is going to ban the use of iPhone to some of its population or workers on some agencies of the government, that will cause an impact on the shares of Apple, because that means less consumers to buy those products. But it's also, I think, my view is because Apple phones, they have protection in terms of customers' privacy. And of course, Xi Jinping wants to be able to look or have access to the information of what's being done by the iPhones, especially if you work for the government agency. So that is a way in which China may be hurting Apple shares. Now, Russia is complaining that the US has sent some depleted uranium shells to Ukraine. I want to talk about this. This ammunition, I already talked about this before, because it's not the first time that Ukraine receives depleted uranium. So when you enrich uranium, there is a byproduct which is depleted uranium. And if you use those ammunition, what happens is the density of those shells are higher than the density, for instance, of lead. And the thing is, once under pressure, they tend to expand and, of course, catch on fire. Now, that means once they penetrate a point, if they're under pressure, they will explode. And that explosion may send fragments of radioactive or dust of radioactive uranium. And that, of course, will be inhaled or be hitting or touching someone's skin. The thing is, if it gets to the eye or gets to the skin or people inhaled, they may get contaminated with depleted uranium. And Russia is not happy that that's happening. And of course, there's arguments saying that those shells are not radioactive. They are radioactive. They're just not as radioactive as uranium or enriched uranium. They may be like 50 or 60% of the radiation of the regular uranium found in nature. And there's some movements that try to ban this and consider this a crime of war. But of course, US feels that they can provide this to Ukraine. And I think, in my view, this is a very negative move from the US, because the thing is, the rest of the world may not look as positive if the US does this. The other thing that the US is doing, which is not really positive, at least not in my view, please let me know if you disagree on the comments below, is that they're using the dollar as a weapon. They're now going to use funds which have been frozen, and they have decided to give those funds to Ukraine. And of course, there's a difference between freezing funds and giving funds, or appropriating those funds and give that to someone else. So I think the US is crossing a few red lines, and the escalation is going to continue. And I think at one point, Vladimir Putin will have to deliver a different response. One thing is for Vladimir Putin to say, oh, you cross one red line, you cross on the red line. But if he doesn't do something about it, the US will feel like crossing more red lines. Now, in my view, those are two red lines that, regardless of the response of Vladimir Putin, it looks very negative and will hurt the US in the long term. Because if they're using depleted ammunition on war, that will look bad on them. If they are confiscating people's phone, there's a difference between freezing, as I say, and appropriating someone else's fund or another nation's fund and give that to someone else. At least that's my view. If you do not agree with me, please let me know on the comments below. Now, at the same time that there is the idea to give money to Ukraine, McCarthy is tying the Ukraine aid that Biden wants to give to Ukraine to something that he wants, which is an increase or a bill for border security. Now, the thing is, US eventually will have to stop sponsoring Ukraine. I have been saying this here in the channel, And I think for Biden, this is not good. There's a lot of domestic problems in the US, and the more the US helps Ukraine and do not focus on the problems that they have at home, the more negative it looks. And I think Biden is now in a situation that he feels like supporting Ukraine is good for his campaign. But I think as the situation gets worse in terms of the price of energy, the sanction not really delivering the results, I think Biden may be in a situation which is really complicated, because if he continues to help Ukraine and do not pay attention to the problems at home, it's going to be very difficult for him to continue his campaign. And if the US enters in a recession during his campaign, that's going to be even more negative. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but the thing is, all else equal, the US may enter a recession. And if Biden on a recession will continue pushing to help Ukraine, things may change for him. And I think there are chances that he may not be reelected. At least that's my opinion. What is your opinion? Please let me know on the comments below. Now, still on Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia do not want the grains of Ukraine to come to their country. And the reason is right here. Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia are continuing to push for extending a ban on grain imports from Ukraine until the end of the year, warning of disruptions on their domestic markets, according to the people familiar with the issue. The thing is, the grains of Ukraine, they need to be sold desperately. So the price of things depend. Do I want to sell or do you want to buy? And Ukraine very desperately needs to sell their grain. Now the thing is, to produce that grain, they don't have to abide by the same regulations that other countries in Europe, such as Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia, have to abide, which means the production of grains in Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia, the cost of production is higher than the cost in Ukraine. Plus, Ukraine is desperate to sell their grain. So when those grain enter those countries, what happens is it pushes down the price of grain across the board, including the grains that are being produced by the locals. So the locals may not welcome Ukrainian grain for that reason. And that means much harder or more difficult for Ukraine to be able to commercialize their grain. Now, another thing that happened in Bloomberg today, they confirm my view on what could be the outcome of the meeting between Vladimir Putin and Kim, the leader of North Korea. If you want to find out about my view on that, link above or on the description below. And as I mentioned in the introduction of this video, the Eurozone barely grows after export downturn. Now here's what happened. The Euro area economy barely grew in the second quarter as new data, of course, data is showing that there has been only 0.1% growth, which means the entire Europe may be entering into recession by the next quarter, because the growth has diminished significantly. It's almost no growth. And of course, 2 quarters without any growth categorizes a recession. So that means that the European continent may be going into recession, and that means a lot of pressure or more difficult decisions to be taken by Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank. Now that was on traditional market. Let's look at Binance. Binance has been indecisive or not make a strong decision in terms of freezing BNB wallets. So let me explain what this is. There was a rug pull that occurred on Popcorn Swap. You can see here. It turns out that Binance does in fact have the power to freeze private wallet addresses on BNB chain. Of course, I have been saying here that the BNB chain is not as decentralized. It is a centralized chain. Now, if you want to find out more about BNB, I have made presentations and videos about it. Please use the link in the description or above. Now, the Popcorn Swap there was an exploit on a smart contract, and that exploit allowed someone or some individuals to move large amount of funds to a specific wallet on BNB, depleting or pretty much stealing people's money. Now, Binance's position was, if those funds comes to Binance centralized exchange, Binance would have no problem freezing and wait for investigation to decide what actually happened. Now, the thing is, those who got rug pulled or those who were affected by this try to push CZ or Binance to take action on the BNB chain. And there was a post made by Binance staff that they could freeze that wallet. The thing is, they did not freeze the wallet, but the funds have not moved from that wallet for 2 years. According to Binance, it is because of the owner not moving those funds and not because Binance froze it. Binance is pretty much waiting for the end of the investigation before it can take action. Now, one thing I want you to understand from this, I'm not going to read the whole article, but it is true that Binance, you can see here, at the request of the popcorn swap victims or people who lost their money with the popcorn swap rug pull, Binance proposed blacklisting the attacker's address. Now, this took place in 2021, and Binance is refusing to freeze the person's or the attacker's address. But one thing we need to pay attention to, the popcorn swap scam serve as a sign of caution at the risk of using smart contracts. The person used a vulnerability on the smart contract in order to be able to pull the money from the people. If a smart contract contains a loophole or a flaw that allows the attacker to drain user funds, it will happen. There's a lot of people looking at those things. So if you want to use DeFi, if you want to use liquidity pool, or if you want to use anything on a smart contract, please be aware that this is still experimental. There's a lot of risks and there's a lot chance of you losing your funds. Please be careful. If you want to use smart contract, if you want to use this thing, make sure that you know what you're doing and make sure that you put into this money that you're willing to lose. This technology is still very new, it is still not survived the test of time, and there will be more rug pulls and there will be more exploits on smart contracts because the technology is just so new. Even after the technology is mature, attacks will be there. So please proceed with caution if you want to use DeFi contracts or smart contracts. Now, the G20 Summit will be between the 9th and 10th of September, which means a few days from now. Now, there are two political leaders that are not going to join. One of them is Vladimir Putin and the second one is Xi Jinping. So those two leaders are not going to attend this meeting. And what happened is because they're not attending the meeting, the West or the other countries may feel like they have a stronger position because there's no one there to represent the global South. But Narendra Modi, which is the leader of India or the Prime Minister of India, has already said that he has an agenda and he will speak for the global South, and he already decided a few things which he believes should not be discussed at the summit. And one of them is the war. What he wants to discuss is the consequences of the war, such as hunger and what can be done in those terms. What he's not willing to accept is a discussion about the war, especially because Vladimir Putin is not there, and of course Xi Jinping is not going to be present. So I think that India is putting itself as an important leader or an important voice to the global South. So the summit is going to happen, as I said, between the 9th and 10th of September. And of course, if you want to find out more about what will happen at the summit, what will be discussed in the summit, I'm going to be here to update you guys. So if you want to find out about that, please subscribe, click the notification bell, and that way, whenever I make a video talking about the events on the summit, you'll be notified. And with this, I end off this video. But before I end this video, please remember to let me know on the comments below what are your thoughts on depleted uranium. Also, if you know someone who can benefit from this video, please share this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and see you guys on the next video.